Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Mighty, written by Barsum Israel. Don't worry about it, Estelle, Eric said, gently laying his large hand on her frail shoulder. I've got this. Estelle reached up and put her own small hand onto his, her eyes closed behind her almost comically thick glasses, and a small tear tracked down her cheek. I should try and help, she started to explain, her voice small and frail compared to Eric's. I can distract him or I could. Words failed her. She knew that she would be more of a burden than a help. Eric just smiled down at her. At 6'4" tall, he towered over her as she stood at a mere 5 feet of height, where he was just 35 years of age, strong and hardy, with muscles built from years of logging. She was elderly, pushing 85 at least. No, he knew better than to ask, and she was thin, sickly, and riddled with pain. Her shockingly white hair contrasted her dark skin. The two could not have been more opposite. Estelle had been picked up in South Georgia. Eric was picked up in Oregon. The only reason they had been taken, as some bug-faced-looking troll explained to them, his chirping and clicking sounds, changed by a device on his belt into English, was because that some great event, which was called the Galactic Games, had arrived. It seemed that once every 25 galactic cycles, a contest of great import took place, where 50 species all fought to the death in the great arena. The betting and the money that changed hands during this event had fortunes won and lost, planets changed possession, and in some unfortunate cases, entire races subjugated to indentured servitude, all due to an ill-informed wager. This year, there was only 49 species, as one that normally attended the games were wiped out by their sun going nova. They needed another species, and so they searched and found the humans. Rather than asking for a tribute of 2 members, the Games Committee felt it prudent just to take 2 at random. So, that is what they did. The bug troll went on to explain that 2 members of each species volunteered after spending their lives training for this event. The winner would receive 25 times the weight of their heaviest opponent in what precious metal they desired, and the prestige. You can choose any luxury, bed any other partner, demand any exorbitant price to make an appearance, and it will be granted. The bug troll hesitated, seemingly sure that the newcomer called humans would be impressed. He was only slightly disappointed to see that they were not. I did not volunteer for anything. Eric growled through clenched teeth. He looked back at his companion, the elderly black woman called Estelle, and I'm pretty sure she did not either. The bug troll remained quiet for a moment, as if trying to think of a proper sentence. What he finally said was, I don't care. As he turned to leave, he said, Whether you fight or not makes no difference. Once in that arena, whoever you are facing will kill you. I hope to make a large sum of money from your deaths if you are the first race to perish. And so, that is how Eric and Estelle, the first humans ever in the Galactic Games, came to be. Eric shuddered at some of the other species he saw. Small, fast beings with razor-sharp claws, hulking beasts whose hands were the size of his head. Thin creatures that seemed to flicker in and out of his vision. And worst of all, something that Eric could only describe as a mantis spider. Long, scything talons, mandibles that dripped some greenish-colored liquid, and a huge, towering, arachnid body. It gave him shivers to even think about it. That is a Timac, one of the guards told him as the creature lumbered by. He is by far the favorite to win this event. Eric looked helplessly at the hulking beast. And there are 2 of them, he asked. The guard barked out a laugh. Yes, but Timac will kill his partner the moment the games begin. Most of the champions do. It's tradition. No need to share the spoils. The guard turned and eye-stalked to where Estelle was in the back of their holding area, on her knees, rocking back and forth and praying for salvation. I think it'll be easy for you to do the same, he said. Eric recoiled in disgust. The calm nonchalance which the alien suggested he kill a helpless woman just solidified what he was dealing with, and it made the thought of killing them a little easier to bear. So, when it was about time to begin, Eric placed his hand on Estelle's shoulder. "Don't worry about this, Estelle," he said gently. "I got this. When it begins, I'll pretend to kill you, and you just lie down. I think that'll be enough to keep you safe, at least for a little while." Estelle could only nod her head in silence, her hand resting on Eric's, with tears of frustration squeezing out from tightly clenched eyes. The arena they stood in was packed floor to ceiling with spectators. Announcers spoke the names of the competitors and their odds of winning, translated into every language. The crowd was already cheering without the games having even begun. In the arena itself, 100 warriors stood facing each other, spread out evenly. A countdown began, blaring over the loudspeakers, but the roar from the crowd almost drowned it out. Then a loud wailing siren sounded. The games had begun. Immediately, Eric turned to Estelle and put his hand around her throat. He looked like he was choking the life out of her, but he was really just gently lowering her to the ground. "Don't move," he whispered to her. "Don't let them know you're alive." Estelle gave a subdued sob, a slight nod of her head, and lay still. Eric stood and looked around. It seemed that most of his competitors also just attacked their partners the second the games began. The ground of the arena was already littered with the dead. Eric saw Tiamak slicing up his partner easily, body parts and blood flying with every swipe of the Tiamak's mighty claws. Shaking his head in disgust, Eric advanced towards his nearest enemy, a bipedal feline-looking creature. The fight was quick. The cat creature darted in, hissing at Eric. But a quick right cross brought the thing to the ground, and then a quick stomp from the work boot ended it. The crowd was always roaring at some action that was going on, mostly around Tiamak's victories. Eric made sure to steer clear of any area Tiamak was in. As the number of fighters dwindled, Eric realized that most of his competitors were very badly winded, some struggling to stay upright as the battle raged. Eric was tired, yes, but he had plenty more reserves to draw from. It was this that kept him alive. He kept moving, darting in and hitting opponents, then darting out until the opponent dropped, or they got frustrated enough to move on to a newer, slower opponent. Eric saw himself facing off against an alien that looked like a small tree, with dark bark for skin and long twig-like fingers. Eric soon found out that even though the twigs looked fragile, they were razor-sharp and deadly. Eric struggled against this tree creature, but was unable to get in close. Every time he tried, a quick slash ended his attempt and opened more wounds on Eric. His arms, chest, and back were soon covered in bleeding gashes. Looking around, Eric saw that there were only 3 fighters left: the tree creature, himself, and Tiamak, who was standing back watching them fight to the death. No need to attack now. Let them fight and hurt each other more. Eric became desperate. He was unable to penetrate the defenses of the tree creature, and he was losing a lot of blood. He had no choice. He feigned wariness, stumbled, and making slow lunges. He was attempting to lure the creature into thinking that he was worse off than he really was. It seemed to work. The creature became more excited, taking more risks to end the fight, as Tiamak slowly circled them both, waiting to rush in and attack the victor. Eric stumbled and fell to a knee. The creature rushed in to finish him off, but instead of finding an exhausted human on his last legs, the tree creature suddenly saw Eric lunge forward with his left arm grabbing it by the throat. The creature thrashed, slashing at the arm that had it in an iron grip. Tiamak started to approach, getting ready to pounce. Looking directly into Tiamak's eyes, Eric roared, his deep, bellowing voice even drowning out the roar of the crowd, and Eric lifted the tree creature by its throat off the ground, one-handed, while the creature continued to slash his arm to bloody ribbons. Tiamak hesitated and saw, with a final roar, Eric shake the creature by the neck. Tiamak heard a loud snap as the neck broke, and Tiamak watched as Eric threw the corpse to the dirt, his eyes never leaving Tiamak's. For the first time in his long life, Tiamak found himself a little intimidated. Eric stood facing Tiamak, his arm ripped to shreds by the tree creature. His red blood ran down his arm, to his fingers, and down into the grey dirt of the arena. Tiamak extended his front foreclaw, long, scything, and razor-sharp. Tiamat was limping a little, as an opponent had managed to damage his back left leg. Eric looked hopelessly around. There was nothing he could use as a weapon. Nothing but his own hands. Tiamat rushed at Eric, swinging with his mighty claw, but Eric was able to dive out of the way. Tiamat struggled to turn and face him. His back leg was hurt more than Eric first thought. It gave him a little hope. If he could stay out of the way of the talons, he may be able to wear Tiamat out. So Eric started a long cat-and-mouse game, the audience roaring each time a claw almost cut him in half. There were many times a piece of paper could not have fit between the talons of Tiamat and Eric's skin. Soon, Tiamat started to tire. His slashes slowed, and inside of a wide sweeping swipes at Eric, to save energy, Tiamat started to slash straight downwards, the tip of his claw digging into the dirt of the arena floor. Eric saw his chance. The next time Tiamat sliced downwards, the tip of the claw embedding itself deep within the hard-packed dirt of the arena, Eric threw his entire body weight in a lunge at the claw, hitting it with his shoulder. A loud crack echoed through the arena, and Tiamat roared in pain, flailing backwards, his right arm spurting green blood where the claw had broken off at the wrist. Eric quickly grabbed Tiamat's broken claw and strained, managing to pull it out of the dirt. The crowd was on their feet, stamping and screaming as Eric stood, facing Tiamat, using Tiamat's own claw as a weapon against him. Tiamat hissed in rage and pain and lunged at Eric. Eric roared at Tiamat and ran to meet him, the two gladiators slamming into each other, slashing and tearing, trying to end each other's existence and finish this. Eric screamed in pain when Tiamat managed to slice through his abdomen and down into his thigh. Eric knew that Tiamat had overextended himself to do this, so Eric swung with all his strength at Tiamat's chest, where the claw Eric was using as a weapon ripped through the protective plating, then stuck in Tiamat's spine. Tiamat roared in pain, grabbed the claw stuck in his chest, and yanked it out, then immediately fell to the dirt, twitching and spasming as the claw severed his spine when Tiamat had ripped it out. Eric fell to his knees, then to his back. His lifeblood pooled around him, and his vision began to fade. He knew he was dying, but he also knew that Tiamat would follow quickly behind. The thought that made Eric smile, and that is how a noble human passed, victorious in battle against a larger, stronger foe, with a ghost of a smile on his lips. As Eric expired, Tiamat knew that he was the winner. He tried to struggle to move, but he was helpless. He knew, however, that he would be allowed medical attention now that the tournament was over, but it would have to come quick if he wants to survive this. That human was a lot stronger and tougher than he ever dreamed. Tiamat's eyes darted in all directions, straining to see the medical personnel that should be running to his aid. He saw nothing. The crowd was silent, questioning why the winner had not been announced. Eric the human was dead. Tiamat was still alive, if barely. So Tiamat was the victor. Where was the blaring siren denoting the end of the games and Tiamat's victory? A gasp ran through the crowd as all eyes turned to where Estelle lay in the dirt. They saw her slowly sit up and struggle to her feet. They watched as she looked around the blood-stained arena, festooned with body parts and corpses. They watched as she slowly shuffled forward in her fluffy slippers, each step creating a small cloud of dust. They watched in silence as she knelt by Eric, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Rest well, my warrior," she said softly, and closed his unseeing eyes with a trembling hand. She struggled back to her feet and looked with pure hatred at Tiamat. Tiamat tried to move, to slash out at the frail human approaching him, but Eric's strike had been too deep. His limbs would not respond. Tiamat tried to say something, but only managed to cough up green blob of bloody mucus to the dirt he lay in. He watched in terror as Estelle stopped and picked up his broken claw. Tiamat tried to flail around, to scream, to do anything. But his body would not respond. He just saw Estelle slowly walk up to him and place the sharp point of his own broken claw to his eye. For Eric, Estelle managed to say, and put all of her sickly, frail weight on the claw. It was enough. The razor-sharp talon slid through Tiamac's eye, releasing a greenish, stringy liquid and piercing through into his brain. The crowd was silent as a grave. Suddenly, a loud siren blared, causing the entire arena to jump in the seats. "Amazing!" An announcer's voice blared through the stadium. "Amazing! The games are over! We have a winner!" And then the crowd erupted in a roar of pure emotion. Some wailed at their lost fortunes, others screamed for the unlikely human, and others yelled just to release pent-up emotions. "The victor of the games!" the announcer roared, and beams of light from a dozen different sources shone down on Estelle's spent and shaking form. "Estelle the mighty, decimator of fortunes, destroyer of Tiamac, humanity's strongest warrior!" Estelle only shuffled slowly back to the large gate at the exit to the arena. The crowd roared with excitement with every step she took, each puff of blood-stained dirt her slippers raised. And then just before she disappeared from view, she turned back to the crowd. A silence so complete you could hear the faintest noises fell across the crowd. Every ear was bent. All attention was focused on this human warrior who stunned the galaxy, waiting to see what she would do or say. Estelle slowly looked across the vast arena, taking in all the alien forms and creatures that covered every square inch of her vision. She slowly raised both of her arms above her head, her small hands clenched into fists, and then she quickly extended the middle finger on each, turned on her heel, and left. Roaring, thinking it was a human sign of victory, the crowd repeated the gesture. Every arm of every alien raised to the heavens, every middle digit extended. It soon swept the galaxy. Any time a contest was won, any time an opponent was bested, the victor would throw both arms to the heavens and extend the middle digit of their hands, in honor of Estelle the mighty. And Estelle, the God-fearing religious woman that she was, had never made that gesture before in her life. But she truly felt that the good Lord would not hold this one time against her. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.